Hello and welcome to Night Clerk Radio. This is episode 145, Cinematic Doom Jazz. And with me as always is my good friend and co-host Burke. Burke, how are you doing?
Okay. Banking on, this episode being a little more like apocalyptic, thematically themed.
Yeah.
It's fine. No, it's just I had an end of day meeting that was supposed to be 30 minutes and became 2.5 hours. So I'm a little fried. So if I'm a little low energy, I apologize. But I'm doing my best.
Well, I mean, actually, low energy is pretty thematically appropriate for cinematic doom jazz.
I guess.
Yeah.
Not this type of low energy.
Yeah.
Like
fair. There's
a little
a bit of
difference between like an ambient, subdued, and understatedness, one might say, versus just wanting to go to bed.
That's yeah. All right. Yeah. I guess there's your self-destructiveness is not at a peak,
No, I'm too tired to be self-destructive.
Yeah. That's
probably for the better. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? It's doom jazz. I'm putting the doom in doom jazz.
There you go. So this episode was born out of an article from Igloo Magazine, which I'm actually not that familiar with, but the article is The Cinematic Impulse of Doom Jazz Ambient Music, Neo-Noir Psychological Thrillers, and Haunting Music. Written by Philippe Blache last year, April 27th. And yeah, it's a very interesting article talking about the origins of, the link between film noir and music and jazz and the later iterations of jazz, i.e. doom/dark jazz. And it's a very dense article because it lists, I didn't bother to count how many bands it lists, but it lists quite a few bands,
a couple dozen at least.
It's a lot even I hadn't heard of as a fan. So it was a great bookmark, a great trailhead to explore this genre. And so it was kind of just like let's check out do a little sampler of doom jazz to kind of point people, like, these are not gonna be like full album reviews or anything, but just kind of like, oh, this is neat, this is neat. What were your thoughts on the article?
I think the first thing, I was surprised it had been a year since this made the rounds, because I remember you mentioning it. Somebody else posted it to me, like people independently shared it on the Discord and stuff, because it's it's thematically appropriate. And I was like, how did we not do this for a year? And I think it's because a year ago I wasn't going to let you do a stealth Cryo Chamber episode.
Yeah.
But now a year later I've forgotten about it. So you get to do it again. And then I reread the article after we agreed to do it. And I was like, oh yeah, half of this is Cryo Chamber.
I would say not half. I would say like a fourth.
I'm I was going to make it I started saying as a joke, parabolic instead of hyperbolic. I don't know why. Being parabolic, Ross, for jokes. Oh. No. There's a lot of other good stuff. And I think the strength of the article is in the curation. Like there are a lot of stuff mentioned. Some that I knew, like, of course there's, it starts off the Cryo Chamber. You can't not, they're just the current, reigning champion of this genre. And just in terms of exposure alone. Right.
Yeah.
And they still do good stuff. So don't get me wrong, but there's some other record labels that I really like that I'd kind of forgotten about, that now I'm like, oh, that's another place I can go look next time I feel stumped for new music. So like Denavali Records comes up a bunch, and they're one I actually like. And I don't know in what context we would have done them. Probably, what would we have gotten from them? It would have been because I get, marketing emails from them, and I'm sure it's because we bought something for some episode, previous doom or dark jazz episode. Probably like a Kilimanjaro dark jazz ensemble, or something that we've done in the past. So it's nice to be reminded of some of this. I think, the later half of some of the curation, I really liked getting into stuff that strays a little bit farther from current, the current trend of what that sort of ambient cinematic jazz, doom jazz, et cetera looks like. So that was really nice. Like that Ulver album, which I definitely want to talk about later.
Yes.
We'll get to it. Because I liked that album a lot. Might have been one that stood out to me, like one of the most, just for being so different. But I think the only thing with this article is that the curation's really great. I wish that it had done more analysis of noir cinema, because that's sort of what the tagline to me anyway, like the slug. Mm-hmm. I guess I don't know in an online article if it's the slug or whatever, but there's, kind of like the initial sentence to drag you in. It's in a pull quote, it's in the gray box. Mm-hmm. It's designed to get your attention before the article starts. And it says like a new wave of acting performances and narratives that challenge traditional literary conventions of detective stories or crime novels, shift the focus towards deeper existential themes and highlight aspects of the human condition. That never comes up again. There's no mention of like current cinema or like what these acting performances are.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, they're
like they never get back to that.
Yeah, the most recent movie that they quote or mention is Naked Lunch from 1991.
Yeah, 91. That's 35 years.
Yeah.
So I really would have liked to follow up on that, because that's one of the things I was most curious about, just because I was thinking about like, what is current noir, especially if like from outside the US, they have insight into like European noir that I might not be into, or if they're like a big film person, like, oh, here's some awesome like South Korean noir, or like, I don't know, Southeast Asian noir or something. And anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't come back up. So I was like, that was the first thing that got me thinking, is like, what actually would that reference? Like, what is some great noir, I don't know, the last 5 years? So that might be something to dig into a bit more, because I only had kind of obvious answers off the top of my head. There's like that Anne Hathaway movie, Eileen or whatever, where she's the femme fatale.
Yeah.
And then I didn't like it very much, but Edgar Wright did that Last Night in Soho. Mm-hmm. It was noir-ish. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be my only criticism of this article, is like, I felt betrayed by your pre-quote.
Promise more than delivered. Yeah. In that regard.
But it's hard to hate, because it's like, then it goes on. It's like, here's like 30 bands. You're like, okay, I'll check these out. Thank you.
Yeah. I definitely have some new bands to keep an eye on from this. And that's sort of like useful enough for me to justify the article.
Totally.
And it's more about music than the movie. I think the movies, again, just kind of giving you like a context for this. Yeah. Those are all fair criticisms. I feel like, this could have been a series of articles, if anything, but like, yeah.
Because like, has the way we do noir now, like, how does that map onto like how we think of like noir soundtracks now or whatever? Because some are very classic. They're almost like a hyperreal, like, this is what noir music used to sound like. And like, that doesn't make them bad. It's just like they're honed in on a certain feel versus like also being forward thinking as a genre. So I don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to do a comparison of like, I mean, the one thing I took away, the reason why they mention these movies, I think, is because this is such a like a cinematic genre of music. I mean, very few genres of music like latch on to a film genre and identify so strongly with it. I mean, and this, listening to a lot of it, I can say sort of my hypothesis is that like, this is sort of, very much a movie soundtrack kind of genre, in that all of these albums showed a wide amount of experimentation and variation. And they're even like, I could make the joke about the dichotomy, but this dichotomy does seem to be like between doom and jazz, like, and doom being more like noise / drone / experimental sort of avant-garde music versus like, this is just jazz. And every album I listened to kind of was, you could put them somewhere on that spectrum. And a lot of times it would vary per track. Like, very few albums were purely like very jazz heavy or purely very like ambient / noise focused, but like they would have tracks that would swing more heavily in one direction than the other. And I think that's, you see that in movie soundtracks a lot, because like, here's the quiet scene, here's the action scene, here's the romance scene. And so we have to have different types of music for each of those kind of scenes. And so these albums kind of mimic that structure of a film score, of a film soundtrack, even though they're not actually film soundtracks. So they're just kind of like that experiment, that variation on a per track basis for each of these albums is wild compared to like, if you take 10 albums of like, just in almost any other genre, they're not going to have that much variation. Like a metal album's going to. I mean, well, I guess it varies, but like
no, like metal is a terrible example. Yeah. Metal actually has like the same spectrum almost in a way, because instead of like saying like, I don't know, jazz, although there's like jazz metal and stuff, or like when you're talking about like some spectrum between, I don't know, jazz or structure or whatever versus like ambient drone. The other thing I immediately think of, because of, they call it doom jazz, is like sludge. because there's sludge metal, which is like a spin-off sibling genre of doom metal. So we need sludge jazz. That's what I'm saying.
Ooh.
So I don't know. I think it's very hard to just say like, oh, this other genre all sounds the same, when if someone were to curate it out for you the same way this article does, they might surprise you.
I mean, that's fair. But yeah, there it just seemed to be more variation on a per track basis in this genre than like most of the music that I usually listen to or that I'm familiar with, like, drum and bass album, you're pretty much.
Yeah. I was just thinking like electronica tends to have more fairly rigid, like this genre is this BPM
or pop music, or a lot of, but yeah, it would be interesting also because I think like all this is inspired by like film noir, and you can mention movies from the 50s to the 90s or 40s to the 90s, or actually all the way to the 30s. But like one of the things that changed obviously is like the people who made those first generation movies, they were coming from theater and coming from silent film, and like that's what they drew on. And then like the later generations were like they were inspired by the first generation of films. And you could kind of look at this in terms of also the music too. Like the music comes from like orchestral, like classical music and jazz and then these other popular genres. And then like the second generation, third generation are just being influenced by the films and the film scores themselves. And as you progress though, like more and more, as you go through time, there's more and more understanding and knowledge of like different kinds of musical production techniques, new technologies, new availability, things like Music Out and Creek and Plunderphonics and like all kinds of synthesizers and all this other stuff. And so like they're still operating the same kind of emotional level, but like in terms of like what they're actually doing is so much wilder and so much different. It makes me wonder, like, there's this fascinating ideas like would have the first generation of film noir filmmakers and the people who made the soundtracks or the scores, would they have used the same techniques if they were available to them, or would they have been more purist, be like, no, we only, because there's always this discussion about like, I'm this purist art film director or composer, and I'm only going to use these techniques because this is what music is, and all this other stuff is garbage, and like, I'm not, so.
And also when you talk about like foundational genres, there's always a little bit of like a chicken and egg thing. Like how do you even go back to reset your conception of stuff back to that not existing? Yeah. That's a thing that's hard to think about, like with art too. There's that dumb movie where like the Beatles don't exist and we're supposed to believe that music is like exactly the same, except there's no Beatles.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What was that one called?
Stuff like that. Yeah. So I always think about that, like the overall importance. God, I had another thought that just totally evaporated too about purity. I think looking back also, it is hard to think about like how purity would manifest. Like I always get into this with my dad, or he's like, oh, the modern Bond films are just dumb action movies. I'm like, they were literally always dumb action movies. Just what's a dumb action movie has shifted out of your marketing demographic. Like they were always like slightly elevated, like action thrillers. Yeah. So I don't know.
I mean, like every time I see like some dumb movie from my childhood getting like a luxury limited edition Blu-ray release, and like the packaging makes it look classy and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, it's the same kind of feeling. It's like, yeah, it's still the same dumb thing. But now, because 30 years have passed, it's classy. It's good now. Yeah.
Now that the olds with money like it, it's their childhood.
Yeah,
it gets a proper.
Exactly. But like, can noir even exist? Can you actually make noir now? Or is that just like purely something that can only happen because like the director and half the cast and crew had to have like served in World War II and been, have varying levels of trauma about it. Like, I don't know.
Sure. Because I mean, neo-noir, I don't know, like when would you put that cutoff then though? Because like Blue Velvet's noir.
I mean, that's a question. I guess is Blue Velvet noir, or is it like a
Blade Runner 2049 noir?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess it's almost 10 years at this point. God damn. Okay. But still.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of this music though, it's like, is this, the genre is a marketing term and all this other stuff, but like it is kind of is this actually noir? Is this like a thing that calls itself noir but isn't really connected to that thing that existed decades ago? And is this music actually connected to the jazz like scores of those films from the 30s and 50s? But these are maybe a bit too navel gazing anyway, because there's great music.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's music to navel gaze too.
That's true. It's very introspective as a genre of music.
Yeah. Which is the other part that I sort of like, because I've talked about with, as soon as you call it cinematic, then I feel okay writing a bunch of like scenes in my head to it. But sometimes like I always talk about that, you know, I compare, especially because we listen to so much instrumental music almost exclusively on this podcast, that if it's like even remotely evocative, it almost always becomes like, you know, I don't know, air quotes cinematic to me, whatever that means. Like, you know, like pictures in your head, like that sort of heavy mediation of like kind of relating the music through shared media in that way, like cinematic tropes or visual tropes or that sort of storytelling. So it was kind of nice to listen to a bunch of albums where that is maybe expected or the goal. It was like a little more liberating. So I don't feel as bad versus like somebody makes a vaporwave album and it's like some cool sample flip. And I'm like, yeah, it reminds me of when the blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you know, like you just don't feel as like dismissive or like, as I've talked about this anxiety before, whenever I compare that sort of music to cinematic visions that like it sometimes feels like you're saying the music like can't stand on its own, which it certainly can. So like music where there's a little bit of permission to do that was certainly nice. But I will say, like, one thing that I've listening to a lot of it over 2 weeks or whatever, I almost started to like get like a smoked the whole pack kind of response where after a while I'd listen to it, I'm like, okay, but what do you see for this? Like, what is this to you? Like, I actually want to know, like, I almost want to see like, because if you think of like a great movie score that becomes like associated with iconic imagery, but now like, what imagery would you have in your head for this? Like, what are you writing to in its own way? Yeah. So that was the other part where I did start to, after 2 weeks, be like, no, I got to know what other people feel about this stuff. Like, yeah. Two in my own head.
Yeah. No, that's,
I don't know, I'm just rambling. I got a lot of like scattered thoughts about all of this because it's just kind of a big broad genre topic.
It is a broad genre topic. It is broader than we usually do. And I see your point because like, you know, like the Terminator score, dun, 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 like how would you, what else would, if you just listen to that as music, like what would you associate with that? Like,
which is funny because it rules. Like I you know, it's great. And, but yeah, what does that become on its own? Like, what does it mean for like a score to be able to stand on its own? Like, okay, I'll give you an example of a score that has aged better for me than the movie. Ooh. That Thomas Newman American Beauty score is actually really interesting for the time. It's really alternative. It's got a lot of like non-standard instrumentation, a lot of percussion, a lot of like alternative percussion, a lot of just texture. And it's like good and interesting, but the whole time, if I try to listen to it, I just see like the stupid bag floating around or like
just picture the bag.
Like all the like, all the like asinine beauty speeches and stuff. And I'm like, oh no, now I wish this existed on its own.
Oh man.
So I was trying to think of like that type of example of like banger soundtracks with stuff that's maybe not aged as well.
Oh, that's
but that's okay to tie that to imagery because while thematically, you know, it's very of the time. That is like I know the Academy Award was like a bit of like a unofficial Lifetime Achievement Award for Conrad Hall, but that is a well shot movie. Not even like in the meme joke of like at least well shot, but like there's a lot of iconic cinematography.
I mean the dream scene where all the rose petals are falling on the girl.
There's stuff like that. There's all kinds of cool like people disappearing and coming in and out of darkness. Just like really great dynamic framing of like people in foreground and background and stuff. Really great. Sorry, this is the American Beauty segment now. Pre-drone establishing shot schlock. It's got like great flyovers of suburbia and stuff. It's got, there's a lot in there.
Did you rewatch it recently?
Like, shot on 35. No, it's just burned in my brain because I really liked the work of Conrad Hall. He was probably my guy before like Deakins. So fair enough. Just a movie visually. I'm just not going to pretend like it wasn't like a pretentious high school movie.
Oh, it was 100%. Yeah, it's
like I watched it. You're watching your South Park. So was
that a 98 or a 99 movie?
99. Yeah, 98, 99.
Yeah. There's like 10 movies that came out in that 2-year period that are just like burned into my brain too, and like I just
like Fight Club and stuff.
Fight Club, Boondock Saints, Matrix. Shakespeare in Love.
Like Conrad Hall. Yep. Cinematographer guy, a little cinematography version. It's hard to be a famous cinematographer. You know, there's not many. So, I mean, he was a 3-time Academy Award winner, with the last 2 coming at the end of his career with American Beauty and Road to Perdition. But he also did Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Oh, wow.
But he also shot the chess movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, which is a really nice little classically shot drama. Cool Hand Luke, Marathon Man. I did like a paper on him. So, yeah. Interesting guy. Yeah. Anyway, hey, how about that? Putting the cinema in the cinematic doom jazz episode.
I do want to have one brief tangent on movie cinematography.
That's fine. It's our fucking show, man. Just hit the fast forward 30 seconds button if you don't like it.
So recently I watched a movie directed by Larry Blymer, I believe his name is. He directed The Lost Skeleton and Cadaver, which is one of my favorite movies. And he did one about 10 years after that called Dark and Stormy Night. And it's a homage / parody of the dark house, haunted house movies from the 30s, where a mansion and someone screaming about killing people. They're all stuck there because it's a dark and stormy night. And it's a low budget movie, and it has the same kind of wordplay humor that Lost Skeleton and Cadaver does. And it's a fun, charming little movie, but I remember being distracted by how good the cinematography was for such a low budget movie, because they were really aping that 1930s style and getting the rim lighting just right. It's in black and white, and they really get the look down. And so I was just wow, this is really well shot for such a no budget movie. They clearly love the genre. They understood it very, very well. So it's got an appropriate or original orchestral score that is sounds like it comes from the 30s, but anyway, back to Doom Jazz. So you mentioned Cryo Chamber earlier, and that's where the article sort of begins, is mentioning, their catalog. Because obviously, as we go listen to our review of Miles to Midnight, that still stands. But they mentioned some of the other artists that are in the Cryo Chamber, label, that they've done several of them. And so you listened to a couple more of those albums?
I did. I tried to focus on, I skimmed all of them. So we can talk about any of them. But I listened to kind of a few from each grouping of provided samples. So I listened to the 2 Cryo Chamber ones I had not heard, which are Lost in Fog by Phonothek and Neon Twilight by Beyond the Ghost. And then I listened to Perdition City by Ulver out of the experimental group, and then APR 70 by Dictaphone. Yeah,
so I'd already listened to those Cryo Chamber albums because I'm much more into Cryo Chamber than you are, and I listened to them on them. But 2 of the artists that they mention in here are some of World Clock and Dead Melodies. I actually like them enough that I looked them up. They released their stuff on their own, or at least Dead Melodies does. So World Clock, great artist. I love. We already reviewed one of his albums from Cryo Chamber. Dead Melodies has released some things on his own, and they're not specifically mentioned in here in the article. But I would recommend looking up Dead Melodies. I really like Statica Sessions, which is an hour and a half long. It's not doom jazz. It's more ambient with some jazzy elements in there, and it's almost like signal wave ambient, very radio staticky kind of thing. And very, very good stuff. So that's a good safe place to start in dark / doom jazz. But in terms of, did you listen to Lovecraft Sextet, Nights of Lust?
No, because I was familiar with them already. So I listened to ones I hadn't heard of. So I didn't listen too closely to the Kilimanjaro, Dark Jazz, and Lovecraft Sextet because I already knew them, but we can talk about them. I'm familiar with them.
So
talk about
Nights of Lust in particular is I really like Lovecraft Sextet. I've listened to several of their albums now. And Nights of Lust in particular I really like because it's almost it gave me 1980s alternate Heathers kind of vibe, because there's a lot of singing in this one. It's very there's a really interesting organ music in it. And it's a very sensual album. It's very in a way that a lot of the other albums are not. It's about Nights of Lust. It does what it says on the cover. So also they have some music videos for this album on YouTube that are taken from short films about young women who look like they're really going through it, and pretty appropriate. So I quite like that. And that was one of the albums I listened to multiple times.
That's cool. Yeah. All that stuff out of that block, I guess I'll say in the article, if somebody reads it, because there's the one you're just talking about, and then there's the 2 Kilimanjaro Dark Jazz ensembles.
Yeah. They're really great. Here Be Dragons by Kilimanjaro Dark Jazz Ensemble. It almost is very post-rock, kind of orchestral at times. It's very grand. I feel like a lot of this dark jazz music as a genre is music for other musicians. A lot of the stuff is done as kind of like dungeon synth in the sense that these are side projects by musicians with more popular bands or acts. And this is what they do to have fun, or they're showing off almost. I don't know. Because again, there's so much variation and experimentation on these albums in general.
Yeah. Just having a blast on the side, maybe. Because one thing I don't know much about is the actual artists themselves. Like, is Kilimanjaro Dark Jazz Ensemble, is that a bunch of people from other bands and they're having fun, and that's why they can experiment more because it is more of their creative outlet, or is it their primary focus? I should know these things, but I don't. But some of these albums are newer than I thought. So
yeah.
Should maybe listen to this one a bit closer, because I think the other Lovecraftian Sextet stuff we talked about was maybe a little bit older, or I'm thinking of somebody else. Oh, it's also a lot of the same artists across these. Oh, okay. I just noticed that. I'm very good. Very good at my job. Yeah, I think the album, one that I would like to at least focus on and talk about is, I think maybe, I always hate saying it's my favorite out of the list or whatever, but it might be, which is Perdition City by Ulver, which is grouped together in this batch of like much more experimental electronic. They say trip hop. It's a Norwegian band. And I thought this was so interesting because it's from 2000. So it just feels like from such a different time than, especially because I listened to it right after the two Cryo Chamber albums, where I'm like, okay, these are good. I get it. And I like World Clock and I like the melodies and all that. I get it. I get it. I'm like, oh, this is like it was such a breath of fresh air. It was so different. Just that 90s aughts trip hop on top of the doom jazz was really, really interesting. Super fun. I didn't even look at the date at first. So I was like, okay, this sounds great. And I was like, oh, it's 2000. That makes a lot of sense. Cause it's from that era instead of like trying to reference it now. And I feel like you notice that in like weird little ways. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, this is what I mean with the side project thing. Cause like I looked up some of Ulver's other albums and they're like rock metal, like it's post metal.
Yeah, they're black metal band.
Yeah. So it's like, but they did this.
They're post metal, I guess. Yeah,
and it's I love Perdition City too. Like like you said, it's very trip hop focused, and big fan of trip hop, as I mentioned before. It gets also very like droney at times, very experimental noise and drone, and which is like again a very good breaking up some tracks, having that variation is really cool. As a whole album, it worked. It flowed really well. Like it really. Yeah, it was definitely a standout for me as well.
Yeah, especially because there's like whole tracks. Like it starts off so strong with like, the first track, Lost Emotions, really has like these doomy trip hop kind of vibes right off the start. But then later tracks, just to throw them out, I don't know, I'm not doing samples for this episode for whatever reason. Like We Are the Dead is almost just like Silent Hill static. It's like slightly structured static and like much more experimental, much more like texture driven. And there's like little bits of like synth and choral stuff in there, but it's a lot of just like radio waves wobbling and stuff. Oh, yeah. Really dominating that mix. So just really interesting variation there.
Yeah. No. But also in this section of the article, they one of the other groups they talk about is Detour Doom, which is even more into that experimental like noise drone than Perdition City was. So Detour Doom by Detour Doom Project. So I don't know if they've done other stuff, but you definitely get, if you really like that, this is definitely someone to check out. Oh yeah, they've done several things.
Yeah. This album itself is 10 years old, so getting up there. Yeah, I like that one a lot. I think what I liked about that is, while being like this very doom drone experimental electronic synth, there's a lot of like saxophone and trumpet and stuff that comes in. So you get some of those that instrument textures and timbres. So also bringing in a little bit of I don't want to say that saxophone makes something jazz, because it doesn't. But
yeah, it could be ska.
It can be ska. The jazz classic band Real Big Fish.
Yeah.
The classic jazz song Baker Street.
Exactly. Yeah. See, other groups we haven't mentioned yet. I like Dictaphone. APR 70 is a really good album.
Yeah. APR 70 was another one that I really, really liked. Out of Germany. Also about 10 years old, 2017. Really, really great. Like even just the sample track from the article, 105.4, was really, really cool. I love all the woodwinds.
Yes, the woodwinds, yeah.
pulsing and stuff. Well, vibratoing clarinet and whatnot. Sounds like super, super fun.
Yeah. And, I forgot to, or didn't have time to listen to some of the ones mentioned at the very end. So, like Liquid Laughter or Joel Fausto and Illusion Orchestra.
I will admit to a bit of laziness, whereas by the time I got to the end of like going through all these bands, I was like, if you don't have a Bandcamp link in the article, man,
I feel like
check you out in the future.
I do like your point about like getting oversaturated in this. Like this is the genre that you cannot like binge listen to in a way that you can with like some other genres.
Yeah. Like I got an 8-hour, I think it's the same one where all algo synced on. I got like an 8-hour video of New Age cassettes I've talked about that I'll leave on and work and not really notice. I don't think I could do 8 hours of this.
No. I was very much like listen to an hour or two a day and like break it up with some other music or go cook dinner or whatever. Yep. So yeah. But yeah, this is hopefully going to be enough to, if you're listening to this, to get you started on trying out some of these different bands, some of these groups, and seeing what you respond to, because there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of difference between these groups, but it's all quite delightful if you like dark and doomed, rainy nights as people in concrete buildings ponder their doomed existences and partake of various drugs and alcohol and engage in some other risky behaviors, because that's what it's all about. Making bad decisions at night, monologuing about it to yourself. So I think that's what it's all about, right?
Something like that.
Did you have anything else you want to add?
No. Okay. I think that this is, I would like to know if anybody likes any of the artists, if you look through this and there's artists in there you like that we didn't talk about, because my aforementioned laziness around getting Bandcamp links handed to me. I would like to know if I missed anything. I think I'd like to stick a feather perhaps in this last batch of bands and maybe do them for an episode in the future.
Oh yeah, that's fair. We should give them a fair shake.
Or even revisit some others, because there's a few others. There's like a middle paragraph about, I think, Russian artists that we didn't really cover very much either. Oh yeah,
I did listen to Mirror Image Artifacts, and they were okay.
Yeah, never mind then. Sorry. Yeah. Paragraph, you're out of here.
Well, that's the only one I listened to, and it was good. I liked it. I don't have specific notes other than that, because again, that was like very late at night.
I liked it and it was good. That's fine. Yeah. We could do the whole show as a TikTok and just have it be that. Like, it was good.
Yeah, listen to it.
That's what I always send people whenever we do an album of somebody I like have a rapport with. I talk to, and we do their album on the show. I always send them a clip I have. It's John Cusack in another well-aged movie, High Fidelity, where he's walking up. He's like, "Your tape, it's good."
Yeah.
I have that in the holster. I send that to people.
Well, that's at the end of the day.
It's my highest praise. It's my gold star.
Yeah, that's all you need.
So I'll just message each of these artists individually with that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. If they're not,
I'm sure they will.
Staring out the window at night on a rainy night and pondering their existence and their existential questions. So
yeah. Beautiful. I'm doing my part.
Thank you so much for listening. Our next episode is April New Music, and we'll have more to say about whatever albums we pick.
Whatever albums we pick, I have no idea. Yeah. I don't even know what fucking mood I'm in for music.
Yeah, exactly. So if you like this podcast and you want to support it, please check out our Patreon, patreon.com/nightclerkradio. We have lots of bonus episodes for you to listen to. We have wallpaper art. We have a great Discord community you can join. We've started a book club series for the Patreon, where we're going through a book on Vaporwave and discussing it chapter by chapter. And, well, what's the book? Well, you'll have to join the Patreon to find out. Well, no.
No, you don't, because you can just look at the episode preview. We're doing Michael Brown's book on eyeliners by now. And I say that only because I want to emphasize that while we're doing the initial book club on the Patreon. I think I'm going to kind of fast track those into public release. And we're also going to do some writing or blog or kind of like other accessible ways for like everyone to kind of participate. So it's a great book. Go grab yourself a copy. Really interesting look into vaporwave history. And it's going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah. It's already been fun to read, and I look forward to reading the next section. So we are on Blue Sky, and we have a website, nightclerkradio.com. You can message us through Patreon, through our website, or on Blue Sky. And please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use, and tell your friends, tell your enemies if they need some music to ponder existence to and make bad decisions late at night. We can recommend some great music for that. So thank you for listening.
Bye.